Hello, this is Michelle Tonkin ND, and welcome to the Healthy Solutions for All YouTube channel. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing the co-infections most commonly associated with Lyme disease, as well as some of the alternative treatments that are available. So stay tuned. Alright, thanks so much for having me today. As mentioned before, we're talking about the different types of co-infections that are most associated commonly with Lyme disease, like Ehrlichia, Candida, Babesia, Bartonella, Epstein, Barr, and so forth. And we're going to be discussing basically the common characteristics, symptoms of these co-infections, as well as some of the alternative treatments that are available for them. So first up, we're going to talk about Bartonella. Now, Bartonella is also known as cat scratch disease, and it was first reported in 1990. That's when the first cases were reported. Probably about 22,000 cases reported each year worldwide. And cat scratch disease, otherwise known as Bartonella henselae, kind of goes after the body as far as it hides in the lining of the red blood vessels. And what happens with cat scratch disease is it can be transmitted through ticks, but also can be transmitted from fleas to cats. So that's why it's called cat scratch disease. I actually had Bartonella when I was 13 years old. I was being a dumb teenager and I stuck my cat's paw in my mouth just to be funny. And the next day I woke up with the typical papule-like rash boil on the center of my forehead. It looked like a cyclops. It was not fun. So I had that anaphylactic symptoms for a few days. The boil actually lasted for about 6 months, which is pretty hard on a teenage girl growing up, but it did go away. But I do remember thinking a few years ago that a lot of the symptoms, and you can see the symptoms of Bartonella, I had a lot of those symptoms on that list. So looking back, I believe that some of what I was dealing with, besides Lyme, was also Bartonella henselae. Now, when people get treated for Bartonella, they can also have the cat scratch marks, and Dr. Schauler has a whole book kind of showing you the different manifestations of Bartonella from that papule, elevated crested rash type look, to the actual markings that look actually like cat scratch marks. As people get treated, sometimes these things appear as the body tries to get rid of them. Now, for Bartonella, my treatment for it is usually a combination of Cimento and Bandra. Now, we discussed Cimento and Bandra in length on the last episode, so I'll just kind of briefly go over each of these different herbs. Cimento is a rare chemotype of the herb known as cat's claw. Now, Cimento has what's called pentacillic oxidoyl alkaloids in it, POAs, but does not contain TOAs, which are tetracyclic oxidoyl alkaloids. That's a mouthful, huh? So yes, it doesn't contain the TOAs, but does contain POAs. And so the POAs, what they do is actually help to modulate the immune system. What I mean by modulate, I mean if your immune system is overreactive, it brings it down to a more normal level. If it's underreactive, it brings it up to a level that actually can respond to what is going on in your body and help with inflammation. Cimento is also great for gut health. I've used this particular herb to help people who are dealing with like Crohn's or IBS, even just basic gut disorders. So it's been well known to be very effective with gut issues. So if you're dealing with Lyme, with gut issues, Cimento is the go-to herb that I suggest. The other one is Bandra. Now, Bandra comes from the extract of the bark of the Otobo parviola tree, and it's been used in South America for a while. It has antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, antiprotozoal properties in it. So it basically goes after everything that shouldn't be in your body. And so those two combinations prove to be very effective, not only against Lyme, but also a lot of co-infections that are associated with Lyme, like the Bartonella. And in the last episode, we mentioned that there are studies done in Townsend newsletter that shows that researchers like Dr. Eva Sappe did some studies of the effectiveness of Cimento and Bandra versus the common dioxycycline, which is used against Lyme and different types of co-infections. So when they kind of did research on the effectiveness of those two, Cimento and Bandra versus dioxycycline, what they came up with was that the Cimento-Bandra combination is actually more effective against the different forms of Lyme, like the round body form, spirochetal, and so forth, than the actual dioxycycline. So it's really encouraging to me that there are other treatments available besides traditional medicine, which some doctors may actually incorporate, along with antibiotics. They may incorporate the herbs with the antibiotics, like kind of pulsing back and forth to making sure that they are having the most effective treatment for their client. The next one I actually want to talk about is Babesia. Babesia is actually a parasite, and it's very small, so it can only be seen microscopically. Babesia has malaria-type characteristics to it, and so a lot of times medicines like quinine and a combination of quinine or erythromycin are used together to help those with Babesia. Babesia attacks the red blood cells, so if you have a tendency towards like anemia, low blood platelet count, and as you can see, the slide will show you the different symptoms. This is kind of like a telltale sign that Babesia could be a co-infection you're dealing with. So make sure that you get that checked out. With Babesia, of course, you're going to have the flu-like symptoms that we saw, and other telltale signs like the night sweats and air hunger and the low blood platelet count and anemia. But also, Babesia has other things you can do besides the typical treatment of quinine and erythromycin. There's actually two herbs that can be taken that have shown to be very good at helping the body to respond to helping the body eliminate the Babesia parasite. And one of them is called Artemisia. Now, Artemisia is also known as wormwood. And wormwood has been around for thousands of years. Traditional Chinese medicine has used it for a variety of ailments. But it wasn't until like the 1970s when they were looking for other alternative remedies to treat malaria that Artemisia actually came back on the radar. And so it was found to be the only really effective herbal remedy against malaria of the 200 remedies that they tried. Artemisia also is great against parasites as well. And if you remember, Dr. Howard Clark had a whole protocol using cloves, wormwood, and black walnut. And I've actually taken that protocol many, many times in the past to help get rid of parasites. And it is very effective. It helps those three herbs, the cloves, the wormwood, and the black walnut, help to eliminate the different parasites, different stages from baby to adult. So Artemisia is also effective as good against parasites. The only issue I have with Artemisia is that long-term use is not good for the liver. It's kind of a little harsh on the liver, so you don't want to do more than about 30 days of consecutive usage. So you need to take a break in between, after about 30 days, take a break for a little bit and then get back on if needed. The next herb that is good against Babesia is Kina. Now, Kina, one of the 4 alkaloids in Kina is quinine, which we're familiar with that helps to treat malaria. And Kina is from the bark of the tree Quinchoa calycea. It's been used by South American natives for hundreds of years to treat like dysentery, malaria, and things like that. So again, Kina is another alternative remedy that you might want to look into if you're dealing with these issues with Babesia. And I don't know if I would suggest taking them both together. It might be too much to do the Kina and the Artemisia at the same time. But certainly I would definitely do one or the other, and then maybe do one for a little bit and then switch the other herb to help knock this parasite out of the body. The next co-infection I want to talk about is Candida. Now, Candida, everyone has Candida in their body. Candida is a single cell fungus that lives normally in the intestinal tract, and it only really becomes an issue when the body becomes out of balance, out of sync. So if the gut has been compromised some way through long-term stress, trauma, antibiotic overusage, a lot of sugar in the diet, birth control even, those things can kind of upset the balance of the intestinal tract of the gut and make it susceptible to Candida overgrowth. So we want to have typically about 80% of good bacteria in the gut and about 20% of bad bacteria to have the right ratio. And we know that the immune system, about 80% of the immune system is in the gut, so gut health is extremely important. Now with Candida, and you can see the list of symptoms, anything from brain fog to bloating, gas, IBS type symptoms, all those can be related to Candida overgrowth. So what I suggest for people is, changing their diet so they're not eating all the high sugary foods and processed stuff to more of a whole foods based diet. And then of course doing a good antifungal. Now there's a lot of antifungals on the market. The one I typically like to use is Commanda. Commanda is another Nutrimedix product. And Commanda comes from the bark of the Capisandra augustifolia tree found in the Amazon. It's been used by those indigenous people for hundreds of years, and it has antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, antiparasitic, anti-inflammatory, and is an immune system modulator. And also, it's really great against resistant strains of yeast. And it's also good for people that have issues with like pneumonia and those type of lung issues. I found it to be very good for helping clear those issues up. So definitely take a look at Commanda. The next one I'm talking about is Ehrlichia. And this is actually named after a physician named Paul Ehrlich. It's a co-infection of Lyme, the bacteria. It can be carried by the larger dog tick and also the tick responsible for Lyme. And about 1/3 of people who have this disease actually get a rash. So I think the rash is more prevalent in this type of infection than in Lyme. This typical rash, though, as you can see, is not the general bullseye rash, but actually like a papule type of looking rash that occurs in people. So be on the lookout for this type of rash if you are having symptoms, as we showed earlier. For Ehrlichia, what I like to do to treat that is the Cimento and Bandra combination again. And also on-the-mid biofeedback can also be effective in helping the body to eliminate these microorganisms. So it's a great addition to the herbal remedies. This on-the-mid is sound-based frequency medicine, PEMF technology, and pulse electromagnetic frequencies. That's what PEMF means. And it gets to the places in the body that herbs might not get to, like the bone and muscle tissue and things like that, and fat, where these disease organisms can hide. So if you're having a lot of issues with co-infections or even Lyme or even viruses, I would suggest looking to on-the-mid biofeedback to helping the body to eliminate these bugs, as well as doing the herbs too. It would be a really well-rounded approach. And now we're going to talk about Epstein-Barr virus. Now this is a very common virus. About 95% of adults in the U.S. from 30 to in their 40s have the Epstein-Barr virus, but most of them are asymptomatic. Okay, Epstein-Barr mononucleosis usually is passed through the salivary glands, and that's why it's called the kissing disease. It can be passed from utensils people have it, and that there's not cleaned properly, or even unsanitary habits. So that's how usually it's passed from person to person. Now, most people, like I mentioned, are asymptomatic, so they could be carriers but not have any symptoms of EBV. Again, this is a virus, just like the other co-infections we talked about, that are opportunistic. What I mean is that when the immune system is down, these things come out of hiding, whether you've had it for 10, 20, 30 years, and then it comes out under a period of stress, or some other infection has taken over, and then this kind of comes on its tail wings there. It kind of comes as opportunistic. So with Epstein-Barr, and you can see the symptoms there, with the swollen lymph nodes, fatigue, and flu-like symptoms. I also see people with this. Usually they have chronic fatigue syndrome, and a lot of times they have adrenal issues or thyroid issues like hyper or hypothyroid. The viruses like to attack the spine, and so we know that a lot of the organs, the whole nervous system is connected to the spine, and so it can attack those areas, and also it, like I said before, it attacks a lot of times the thyroid, and so a lot of people with Epstein-Barr have thyroid issues. So if you're dealing with thyroid issues and chronic fatigue, you could be dealing with a virus like Epstein-Barr. What I suggest usually for Epstein-Barr is a herb called Takuna, and this is another great product from Nutrimedics. It comes from the bark of the Cicroposa stricosa, found in South America, and it has really great antiviral properties. Been tested against bird flu, like Asian bird flu, also good against cytomegalovirus, encephalitis, meningitis, herpes, HPV. And so, if you have any kind of viral issue, Takuna is a great herb to try. I've used this successfully with a lot of clients and have seen really good results. So it's something I would highly suggest looking into to adding to your regime. So that's all the co-infections I'm going to be talking about today. And feel free to look at our website, healthysolutionsforall.com. Check out my books on Lyme and co-infections, The Road to Recovery. I have the original version as well as the condensed version. The condensed version is great for people just starting out that may not want to be overwhelmed. There's too much information for them, so that would be a great place to start. And then the original has all the info in there, and it has a lot of the things that we talked about here today. So please feel free to check that website out. It's got a lot of tools on there, tips, articles, great supplementation, and things like that. And leave me a comment and let me know what you think about today's episode. And if you have any comments about what you'd like me to speak on next, that I might be able to do that for you. And just looking forward to sharing what the Lord has shown me and my research and studies with you guys. And hope you guys have a blessed day. Thanks again for having me.